Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Inland Empire ACRE. CT Realty has acquired about 4 million square feet of industrial product in the Inland Empire in the last 8 months. So, and it's been certainly our most active investment strategy as a company, and we are one of the more active participants in the market. So we are fully committed to the Inland Empire, and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. Speaking of Inland Empire Industrial, I would suggest that if I told you right now we're in probably the most robust industrial market sitting right in the heart of it in the country, and probably the most active industrial market in the country in the last 36 months. A lot of you would probably question what I smoked on my way out here from Orange County. The facts are the Inland Empire is on the hit list for every institutional capital investor in the country, if not the world. The Inland Empire in the past, let's call it 12 months, has seen remarkable recovery in not only values and capital appreciation, but in actual absorption and tenant activity. And I'll get into all that in a moment. But I was asked to kind of give an overview, past, present, future of industrial in the Inland Empire. And I think it helps for some of you that may not live and breathe it as pathetically as I do every day to understand that the Inland Empire really is kind of a growth of the major greater LA market. The greater LA industrial market is the biggest in the country by far. It's 1.6 billion square feet of product with a B. That encompasses about 5 counties. The industrial markets in LA grew up over the last 100 years around the industrial activity really spawned from the port. So the ports of LA and Long Beach, as most people might know, combined are by far the biggest ports in the country. And in fact, handle probably about 38 to 40% of all the container volume that hits our shores in and out of the U.S., right out of LA and Long Beach. So that really, again, spawned and supports the greater LA basin. And over the years, as development has occurred through economic cycles, the development has grown up to East LA, Vernon Commerce, out through the San Gabriel Valley in the 70s, and through the early 80s, late 80s, through all the 90s, in the last decade, it's been Inland Empire. And it's the ground zero center of the Inland Empire industrial market is Ontario, and it's right here. It's not necessarily because of the proximity to the airport, which a lot of people might believe air cargo has a lot to do with it. The facts are it has everything to do with infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, excuse me, namely the 10 and the 15 freeway. So now we have the new 210 freeway, we have the 60 freeway, we have the 215, the 91, and the Inland Empire greater industrial markets have grown over the past 20 years from kind of the heart of Ontario and Fontana, Little Cucamonga, now all the way out to Beaumont to the east, Moreno Valley, Paris, and beyond to the southeast, San Bernardino up at the apex of the 215 and the 15 to the north, and then of course Mira Loma, East Vale, and then down all the way down into parts of Riverside to the south. So that market is 25% of that greater LA market. So we grew up out of the ports, went up to LA, and started heading our way east to the San Gabriel Valley. Now you have 400 million square feet roughly sitting in the Inland Empire. Since, let's call it mid-1990s, developers such as CT and the coal company I used to work for and a number of others used to deliver 10 to 15 million square feet of product a year to our markets, our local markets right here in our backyard. In 2008, just like everything else, that came to an absolute screeching halt. Demand really started to curtail, as to Natalie's point earlier, in 2007. probably second half of 2007, but there were plenty of projects, about 15 million feet of it, that was underway. Those projects that were delivered, and it's not unique to industrial, just about any product type, sat fallow for the last 3 or 4 years. CT has been the beneficiary of a lot of that. We've been out buying, as I mentioned, since last summer, and we've been acquiring what we call distressed assets, taking a lot of market risk, but buying in some cases empty. Our highest profile deal was a 1.4 million square foot project, 100% empty, brand new project, never been occupied in San Bernardino. And at the time we bought it, people thought we were crazy, and some of us included, that were writing some checks, thought we were worried if we were crazy. We leased the entire project to Hewlett-Packard in January, and an absolute home run, incredible deal. Our good fortune and luck had everything to do with it as much as anything, but I'll tell you why that happened in a minute. But getting kind of back to the past, so Inland Empire, having grown up around the, frankly, just the fact that there wasn't any more land available in the San Gabriel Valley, of course, because you get closer to LA, as we go through our economic cycles, people take industrial buildings and figure out a higher and better use as they get closer to more dense markets. And so our market out here is not only the kind of more active market, but it's also the new product because it's been developed most recently. So it's the state-of-the-art product, and there is such thing as a state-of-the-art concrete tilt-up industrial building. The occupiers of that space are very much in tune with little nuances of these big buildings, and I'll get into that in a minute. But Inland Empire, so you've got the best, newest product. You've got a lot of it concentrated around the best infrastructure and the closest proximity to the ports of LA and Long Beach, which are the biggest in the country. It's the closest port as a crow flies to our trading partners along the Pacific Rim, namely China. Most of the product that comes in to the ports of LA and Long Beach, of course, originates in Asia. Most of the product that comes in anywhere in the country originates in Asia. And so, you know, the Inland Empire, at the end of the day, is where all of the state-of-the-art industrial product sits that is fed from the ports of LA and Long Beach and our proximity to the Pacific Rim as the closest port. And that isn't going to change. People ask me all the time, and maybe we'll get into it today, about the Panama Canal expansion. People talk about the fact that California is an expensive place to do business, that you've got a lot of, you know, there's a lot of expense associated with bringing product in and out of LA and Long Beach that a lot of other ports in our country don't have. But at the end of the day, it's in a market that serves 20 million people and beyond, because of we ship out about half the product that hits our shores, most of it, about half of it stays here to serve our population. And it's in a market that's not going to greatly be impacted by either the economics that are, I think, at the moment, a bit of a hindrance to some significant growth, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But the Panama Canal, while it is going to help the ports on the East Coast ports don't really have the infrastructure to get much volume out of there like we do. So anyway, LA, Long Beach ports are what's driven it, and the Inland Empire is where everybody wants to be. A year and a half ago, at kind of the depths of this recession, we sat at about 17% vacancy, above 100,000 square feet. So there's a couple of different worlds of industrial product. And when I talk about industrial, I mean, we've got 400 million square feet of product in buildings above about 10,000 square feet. But about 250 million to 300 million of that in the Inland Empire is above about 70,000 square feet. Two different types of users, two completely different tenant profiles. Thank you. And so The bigger tenants, right now, that vacancy that sat at 17% a couple of years ago has come into about 6%. Market equilibrium is about 5%, so we're darn near back to kind of stabilized peak market equilibrium, and that's happened in 9 months. It's unbelievable. We had about 30 million square feet of transactions in the Inland Empire. Now, a lot of that's guys moving around, but about 10 million of it, or a third of it, is either expansions or new tenants coming into the market. And a lot of it, to Natalie's point earlier, is in the really, really big boxes. Why? Corporate America is doing just fine. The smaller guys, the regional guys, the local guys are still struggling. But corporate America, who had been paying the Prologuses and the AMBs and the Majestics and you know, some of the bigger institutional owners in our marketplace, 40, 50 cents a square foot back at the peak, are now saying, aha, I can go cut new deals, get my rents almost, you know, reduced by 30 to 40, almost 50%, and extend occupancy in brand new, great buildings that have, in some cases, in our case with HP, never been occupied. And so they are doing, they being, again, corporate America, are doing transactions in droves, and that hasn't shown any signs of letting up quite yet. And we're going to talk about the future here. What's happening in the future is there actually is going to be speculative development. That's happening right now. It's scary. It's, you know, a year ago, if I was here, you know, or a couple of years ago, people said, nobody's ever built anything ever again. Ever. And a year ago, we said, well,
never ever was like 2 to 3 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we're proving that theory. So 2 years ago, never ever was ever, and it was really 2 or 3 years, and we've actually exceeded that a little bit because a couple of projects have broken ground on spec. They're going to be a couple of 700,000 foot, 600 to 750,000 square foot buildings in the Inland Empire, and there's going to be 3 or 4 others in the next few months that are going to follow it, all in that same size range. And it's, again, it's pretty mind-boggling. Those are buildings that are breaking ground where they're actually getting financing. They're, or in some cases, doing it all equity, where they've convinced themselves and other capital participants that it's a good idea to go build something without a tenant in tow. Now, most of those deals, believe it or not, by the time they start grading and actually doing some construction activity, tenants show up and they'll have, my guess is, my bet is, in most cases they'll have tenants signed before they get a certificate of occupancy. So today, for those with the right kind of capital and the right entitlement in the right locations, it's a good bet. Construction costs are down. Yeah.
What's the land price have to be for somebody going out to do that?